The movement has spread to other cities like Toronto. So how does a small minority have such a big impact? We get some insight.
And I think it's that same sense I had as a kid when the teachers and the principals did nothing to stop the bullying.
And the feeling that it's not just about the tanker trucks, that the police are chatting up the protesters. They don't seem very fussed about it. And, we're 11 days into it and nothing has happened.
I think they're getting ready to shut this thing down. But it will also be interesting to see what that process looks like, because there have been reports that cops have been helping out the truckers in terms of refueling their vehicles.
Yes.
This is actually effectively a class war, and it does remind me of Occupy, right? It does in many ways. That this is effectively the people who don't have the power to write the scripts at the moment, but who are actually making the democracy run, saying, finally, fuck this.
Yeah. People, I haven't been to that many protests in my life, but I've never been to one where they are cleaning the sidewalks.
You need to come and see for yourself.
Yes.
Because whatever they are saying on the media, it's totally false. I don't know.
It's like Christmas. It's like New Year's.
It's better than Canada Day.
It's the new Canada Day.
And the world is watching us. The world is watching us, and we are the point of the spear. And right now, everybody all over the world is going, yeah, we can do this.
And I just want to be in a community, and I want to be together, and I want to see people's faces.
They are shoveling the snow away from the police. Now this gentleman is offering the policeman donuts.
There have been videos circulating of Ottawa police, and they're being interviewed by the protester, the occupiers, whatever, and they're saying, so what do you think of this protest? And they're going, oh, it's great. The police officer, it's great. And the government's really going to have to listen to you guys now.
We have lost human beings. We have lost loved ones. We have lost economies. We have lost our jobs. We have lost our stores. We have lost our businesses. We have lost our friends. We have lost our agency, our ability to travel. We have lost too much. We are done. And frankly, the so-called knowledge workers who have lost far less, by and large, far less, because they can afford to have the people who are actually doing the real physical work of the world bring all their stuff in and assume that the supply chains will just keep functioning because I'm sure there are people there doing that.
My fellow neighbors, fellow people in Ottawa, we're working overtime to try and keep ourselves calm. It's a huge soup of emotions, from worry, anger, anxiety.
The Ottawa police and the Canadian government have taken an incredibly hard line against these truckers. Now, there has not been use of force yet, although apparently that, remains in the cards and it is possible. But they've been denounced by the Prime Minister. They've been denounced by the police. They've been accused of, all sorts of things.
I never cried that much.
The past 2 years.
2 years.
Tears of happiness.
Tears of happiness.
Friends who think it's bad. Have they stepped foot down here to see it for themselves?
No. Like, my sister thinks that it's some white supremacist movement. It's like, okay.
Monday, we had the best conversations with everybody. They were just loving beyond belief.
Oh, it's love. Look at these people shoveling. They went to Canadian Tire and purchased shovels to clean up the sidewalk for us. Phenomenal.
It is not impossible for there to be such a huge outcry about this that they go, you know what, we're just not going to do it. That is possible. What's much, much harder is once it becomes law to get it rolled back.
The convoy was met with a large number of supporters braving the cold along the way, many of whom say they are fully vaccinated but are simply against vaccination mandates.
There does seem to be a shift in public opinion in terms of where we are in the pandemic.
Professor Pennycook says coming up on 3 years of pandemic life, some are willing to take back control of their own health risks.
Why did you drive down, if I may ask the obvious question?
There's just so much misinformation happening among our friends and community back home, and we just wanted to show the videos live ourselves and really report back that this is something, a movement that's happening, and it's time to drop these mandates.
It's been great.
What a positive atmosphere. I don't know what the news is talking about.
Here in Ottawa, having a great time.
It is. We're going to see. So there's two things we're looking at tonight.
I've got so much oxytocin since 10 o'clock last night when I came here. I've been hug deficit for the last 2 years. I've been topped up by all the
hug
hugs.
deficit. Let's get started.
Oh, I've been topped up since coming here. It's a beautiful thing.
They should have the decency to remove themselves from the community. If they refuse to do that, then measures have to be taken to safeguard the community from them. Then comes the practical question that you ask, how can we get food to them? Well, that's actually their problem.
You have icons of the progressive left who are now opposite of the actual workers who are revolting.
And since you treasure your liberty so much, find a way to secure it for yourself.
This started with vaccine mandates, but for most here, it's about a lot more.
I think this is more of a freedom movement.
Well over 1,000 people lining the Trans-Canada Highway outside of Winnipeg in -30 wind chills, protesting what they call government overreach.
Somebody has to stand up for Canada, and the truckers are doing it.
It all started a couple days ago in Delta, BC. Truckers protesting vaccine mandates at the border.
They've just overwhelmed Ottawa with thousands and thousands of trucks. And so now they have these laws where you're not allowed to refuel them, you're not allowed to give them food.
There was a statement released by the Ottawa police this morning, essentially stating, what was the language, to surge and contain?
They basically said if anyone's seen giving water or logistics to any of the protesters, they would be criminally investigated. You live in Ottawa.
I live in Ottawa.
Okay,
I've been here every day.
Tell the people what's going on here.
It's a party. It's the most amazing movement I've ever seen. I can't say I'd ever anticipated.
Beyond love.
Oh, it's the best thing ever.
Seriously.
Yeah.
It's 11. It's ridiculous. It's so friendly. It's so family friendly, safe, clean.
This is what brought me down here was to show the reality versus what's being conveyed in the media.
Yeah, we have smiled so much in the last 2 days, or 4 days. It hurts. It is the best thing ever.
That's how you sleep at night, people.
No joke. I mean, if you live in Ottawa, especially there, yeah.
Amazing. Are you part of the convoy?
No, I wish I was. But I strongly support it.
It's a different world, dude. It's a total in Ottawa, 40-minute walk away. And so I think and then I show them videos on my phone, and you see the drop in cognitive dissonance, and it's beautiful because they're like, that's not what I thought it was. So I just tell everyone, go downtown and see it and say hi to people.
We want to thank GoFundMe for listening to our concerns as a city and a police service. The decision to withhold funding for these unlawful demonstrations is an important step, and we call on all crowdfunding sites to follow.
And the locals are making the food like every single day, but they don't necessarily want to distribute it.
I think they want to join, they just can't. It might lead to, based on what the police officer, the police chief today said, any assistance with logistics with the protest might be investigated and met with criminal sanctions. Giving them water, giving them food to the protesters, assisting with any logistics, potential criminal investigation.
I love it.
Compared to what you've heard on the news, how do you feel about this?
The news is fake.
It's all fake. All fake. This is glorious. This is glorious and free.
The news of the hour is that GoFundMe has apparently ceased the GoFundMe.
We now have evidence from law enforcement that the previously peaceful demonstration has become an occupation. So this is a very important point, Crystal. The Freedom Convoy of the truckers who are originally protesting vaccine mandates, but really more it's become a catch-all for all restrictions in Canada on top of vaccine mandates and restrictions, lockdowns, masks, etc., has become a force where they've occupied, not even occupied, I don't even want to use their language. They have taken up, certain parts of the city. In Ottawa, they're honking their horns. They're getting a lot of community support, both out in the United States, but also within Canada as well, and it's turned into a real grassroots movement.
GoFundMe tried to steal the money, which is wild. They got $10 million in donations for the truckers, and GoFundMe thought it would be great if they gave that money to the charities of their choice. You fucking imagine the gall.
Work with organizers to send all remaining funds to credible and established charities verified by GoFundMe. All donors may submit a request for a full refund until February 19th. So they were giving people 2 weeks to get on and order a refund, but it seems now because of the backlash that they've just done all of it. Which, I mean, it's strange that somehow feels like a victory because the anchoring point has been set. So, at least they didn't steal it and give it to another charity. Well, no, they shut it down and didn't give it to the people it was supposed to go to.
I would disagree. I would say the victory here is that their machinations are made public.
As part of my research for this, I listened to Canadian Broadcasting Corporation podcast that was truly insane. They brought in this woman who's an expert in like terrorism financing.
Oh, good, yeah.
And then she was using all of this language that was plucked straight from Russiagate, talking about, we don't know where these funds are coming from. This is foreign influence in our country. And she wasn't talking about Russia. She was actually talking about the United States.
Yeah, of course.
But it was all like meant to be very nefarious and very sketchy. I mean, first of all, it was just completely invented because she had no idea who gave the money, where the money came from. It was interesting, her language too, because the reason she first decided to investigate it was because it struck her that it was not likely that they organically raised that much money.
It seems shocking to the legacy media and the would-be elites, and the would-be elites, because they can't imagine that the lower classes would ever rise up.
I'm a 12th generation farmer, right? And to be honest, they have no leverage to make me get shots. I live on a dirt road on the Bay of Fundy in Nova Scotia. I could easily be sitting home and farming. I have things to do.
The working class that you're supposed to represent, they're telling you, like they're literally telling you, people aren't deciding to go out into the middle of the Canadian winter and it looks fucking miserable. It looks so miserable while whatever it is that they're doing. And people are setting up pizza ovens and soup kitchens and they're standing guard around a statue of a one-legged man because it got desecrated a couple of days ago.
You know, flowers on a monument to some are honor and respect to some and vandalism to others when you are liars.
And so what we've been doing, because we're so close to the action, like we're literally, I could throw a snowball and hit the war monument from here.
Don't do that. That would be vandalism. It's a joke. It's a joke. Sorry.
So what's been happening is people from home message us and say, hey, we heard that the monument was vandalized. So 2 minutes, we can run out and take a picture and show them. And so since then, people have been asking more questions. Well, what's going on? So we're giving updates on like the fuel situation, how people can give money, what things we need, how people can help, how to get up here.
They're not doing that because they're bored. But that takes an awful lot of effort to go and do something like that. So this is the working class telling you what they feel.
The argument is they've all been brainwashed by the forces of evil. Somehow Trump's probably involved. So they don't really recognize them as having agency when they're being defiant.
It's a little show play, right? Just like they're stealing gas. All they want us to do is overreact. And instead, we're going to do the most Canadian thing in history and be calm, peaceful, clean up the streets, feed your homeless, and lower your crime rate.
I'm not. This is not for giggles in any way. Can I see your hands, please? I don't want everyone to, because when I shake a hand and you can see and feel the callus.
Now to have a large group of people say, hold on a minute, there are other ways to go about this. This causes people who prefer safety to liberty enormous psychological distress.
So here's my take. I agree with you. We live in society. It gives us nice things. It could be community, it could be culture, it could be economic opportunity. The price we pay is our cooperation.
Because everything in their mental makeup is about giving up choice and having options in favor of being told what to do for the sake of security and safety, which has not at all been guaranteed to them whatsoever.
I mean, they're the vast minority in this country, and a lot of us want to keep those vaccine mandates.
Now, many people, understandably, did what one does in light of a vaccine that they are told has passed safety tests, is useful in fending off a disease that we know is dangerous, and they got vaccinated quickly.
Well, and I think more to the point, they were told that if you do this and enough of your countrymen do this, everything goes back to normal. You get your lives back.
I think these mandates that we have are rather reasonable, especially with the vaccine. It's it's a freely available product, and you can get it for free.
I don't know if it actually would have happened had these been the safe and effective treatments that we were told they were, and presumably Hopefully, no one knew how not safe and not effective they were at the time we were being told that.
And they're safe and effective. There's mountains of data out there that shows how safe the vaccines are.
In the last year or more, certainly, there's been this meme of Clown World, where people say something that's perfectly ridiculous.
What authorities are now trying to do is, and this is not exact language here, but it's kind of starve them out, right? Don't let them have any gas. Don't give them access to food, other staples, other reinforcements. Any sense about whether that's working?
Well, that just started at like 2 o'clock in the morning yesterday. So everybody woke up this morning. Oh, yay, they raided them at 2 in the morning. But then the TikTok started, and the occupiers are sending up videos showing that they're still barbecuing and everything's great. Now, I don't know how much of that is bravado.
They're responded to with, a green clown pressing his nose.
The horns only stop when the occupiers have their prayer time, because of course at the root of this is a Christian movement.
There's another meme where it's a lobster claw holding a clown nose saying, "Here, you drop this." So that had been a thing. And now they're literally honking. And there's people on Reddit having meltdowns saying like, "I can't sleep. This is terrorism."
Yep.
Taking freedom away from people who live here. I have never protested in my life, but I am so appalled by the lack of action by all three levels of government. The occupation of Ottawa has to end. I feel lucky enough that I can leave and go get coffee and go to the drugstore right now. But a lot of people in our city don't feel that privilege, honestly. And they're telling me that it's freedom for my mask. And I said I'm happy to wear my mask.
What do you say to the argument that people who live in a government town, the capital city of the country, should be expected to tolerate what might be disruptive protests?
You know what? A lot of people have tried to make that argument to me, and I think it's bullshit. Okay. I don't think people who live in a residential neighborhood in Ottawa should just expect to be subject to that. To be subject to that.
But we're learning from this whole pandemic is not just about authoritarianism and a lot of the issues that we're dealing with about ideologies and how rigid people are, but also about how fragile our civilization truly is when confronted with any kind of adversity.
Yeah,
like
that's exactly right.
People are so fragile.
Well, now, I've driven in every morning. Well, not every morning. I've driven in multiple times. Haven't seen any traffic. In this area, I understand the restaurants have shut down, but I understand it was not by force. It was by recommendation from the city for fear of disruption, which we haven't seen. But what has been the inconvenience? Like, what's been the critical inconvenience for local residents?
You make it fair that
above and beyond the honking, which stopped after the fourth day.
I'm a firefighter. Do you think
It's not that
I get
okay, well, that's
what has been I didn't come prepared with a list of inconveniences. I came with a list of experiences of people feeling threatened in their own neighborhoods. That's what I came with.
It's very important. You also remember that in this kind of culture, being a victim is a high status marker. So the more you demonstrate that you personally are suffering as a consequence of bad people, the more virtuous there accordingly you can claim yourself to be.
Now, your offices are in downtown Ottawa, so do I assume that you have not been to your office lately?
We cannot get to the office, and we're not even making the attempt.
I cannot go to an office building. I can't shop. I can't go to church.
Okay, but now, if I may ask, could you recognize a certain inconsistency in telling someone that they have to do something with their body to do the things that you're complaining you can't do now because it's an inconvenience?
It's not an inconvenience. It's an occupation. I'm not telling them that they have to be vaccinated. I'm saying that if they want certain things, certain rights, then they have to be vaccinated.
You have the right to medical privacy. You have the right to freedom of travel, to freedom of commerce. You can do business with whoever you want to. They have absolutely no right to tell you this. I'm sorry.
As a condition for the pharma companies to provide this vaccine, they insisted on immunity from any negative consequences from it. Oh, well, it's true. Would that change your mind if you knew that? That they were immune from liability from any potential wrongdoing from the vaccine that they're putting into your body. Would that change your mind or cause you to think about something?
I am not a big fan of big pharma, but that doesn't mean that that I would not use products that are life-saving.
It is absurd, absolutely absurd, to tell some healthy 40-year-old, some healthy 30-year-old that they can't travel if they do not get a brand new vaccine for a virus that poses no measurable threat to them.
So I can understand the noise is annoying, and protests typically are.
It's not annoying. It is torture.
Speaking of United Nations, you're familiar with the Nuremberg Code as well? If we're going to cite international law?
I don't. Well, I know what Nuremberg is, but I don't know the code.
To be confronted with open-ended possibilities and having to make like moral and ethical decisions based on your values and how you feel about people, not based on whether people want you to condemn someone for their choices or attack people for choices. Like,
so you supported the BLM protests at home by donating to the protest. Okay, now I'm going to ask you the question. It's for food for thought. Do you find anything mutually incompatible, intellectually contradictory to support that protest and not this one? Say it again.
You think those two things are the same?
I
think one rally in Ottawa is the same as being down here for a week, fucking laying on the horns all the time? You think those are the same thing?
I think that, first of all, I don't think it was one day for any BLM protests. I would disagree on that.
I was here.
Yeah,
we were all here, bud.
Well, hold on. But you support certain protests if it's lasts a certain period of time?
Yes. No, I support them if they're good, and I don't support them if they're bad.
Comparing what is happening right now, which is an actual, honest, grassroots, massive protest in many places in Canada that includes real people who are saying, enough, I will not comply, and this must stop. This is anti-constitutional and anti-human. Compare that to the mostly middle-class led protests of the summer and fall of 2020, which had these fictitious fantasy-like views of what it was that most people in the so-called lower classes were living like, and were speaking on their behalf because what? They didn't believe that these people could speak for themselves? So here we have right now people actually speaking for themselves, showing up.
Actually, the working class rising up and exercising their power and demanding that, and what they did, which was like, I was thinking about it in comparison to the Black Lives Matter movement, which of course was described as mostly peaceful. This, of course, is extremely violent. The images I'm seeing don't really seem to support those two categorizations. But, this was a movement with very specific policy demands. Like the Black Lives Matter almost turned into this, like, we're against racism and even police brutality. Even that's vague. That's very vague. They'd be much better off if it was like, we are here to end qualified immunity.
Yeah,
like that's a very specific.
Who's for police brutality? No one's for it.
Right, exactly. But here's a policy that actually was passed and signed into law. So someone's for that, and they're very clear. This protest, they want an end to these mandates. It's very clear what they're against, and I think there's something powerful about that, specifically when you got a lot of truckers involved, and truckers are very important to a functioning society.
Truck drivers are at the centre of this. They've been blocking roads in Ottawa, and the authorities say it's got out of hand. There's now a state of emergency.
We're outnumbered, and we need to ensure that the order is brought back to our city, particularly as the first priority in the residential areas where these people have been subjected to this kind of boorish behavior.
If you joined the protests because you're tired of COVID, you now need to understand that you are breaking laws. The consequences are becoming more and more severe.
So he was trying to portray, hey, there's these violent individuals out there, these racist individuals out there, and that's not who most of them were. Now this is a new announcement where he's basically going, hey, listen, I just changed the laws on you, so you will now be violent criminals for engaging in what was 2 days ago a peaceful protest.
Yeah. The idea that there's one agency, whoever it is, who gets to define these riots are peaceful and, these truckers are insurrectionists, and, it's very clear how the cards are going to fall. I'm shocked to how quickly people have grown wise to how the game is played.
First, I couldn't hear nothing about it. I heard like there was a convoy, but news didn't show nothing. Then I watched podcasts and they started talking about it from other countries. I was like, what the heck? So I eventually you came across, and then I started listening to you and what they were saying, and then what's going on from what you're showing. It's a totally different world. So I had to come and help.
I'm just interested. I'm interested in getting both sides of the story. As am I. Good. Like it's an answer no one can disagree with.
Everything I'm hearing is how much love there is, how much gratitude, how much joy at being able to interact with people again and being able to see that people will stand up for their rights, for their freedoms, for their humanity. And what is the response from the media that glorified an actually violent set of protests that reliably turned into riots, at least here in Portland in 2020? They are slandering these people and this movement and claiming that this is an insurrection against democracy when it is exactly the opposite.
Some of the organizers of this protest, which, as I mentioned, started more than a week ago, they do want to overthrow the government.
Canadian officials calling the situation a, quote, nationwide insurrection.
The police chief says COVID protests are a, quote, nationwide insurrection driven by madness.
A nationwide insurrection driven by madness.
These very properties, the media and the tech platforms, are being invited, in fact, strong-armed into participating in this slandering. And the point is, it doesn't matter if they're right.
Yeah.
Right? Because malinformation is what it is.
And just think of the language. I know it sounds familiar to you, right? A threat to democracy, an insurrection, sedition.
I'm here mostly because I think that the protest has morphed from, well, a protest into more of an occupation. What we've been seeing is that they've been setting up more permanent structures. So I saw pictures of like 24 propane tanks, dozens of gas tanks.
You saw that? Where'd you see it? I saw the same pictures on Twitter or on CBC?
Online. I think it was Reddit, actually.
Okay.
The police say that they are under-resourced and they are overwhelmed. They have said that this city is under siege.
It's not just truckers. There's a lot of, I've heard there's QAnon supporters in the crowd.
Residents that I have spoken to who say they feel terrorized, intimidated.
It's a cult.
And that's changing it from something that's just going to be a protest to something that means that they're going to be staying here for a longer period.
Until it's not me. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I agree until the mandates end. So they'll be here until the mandates end. And so you're basically saying the protest can last, but it's got to be short and sweet, and non-disruptive.
So when you say mandate, which one are you specifically referring to?
Well, I think the Convoy wants all of these COVID mandates to come to an end. Mask mandates, vaccine mandates, the idea of a lockdown, the idea of shutting down business, all done.
Most of those actually have been done through the provincial level.
He makes $1 billion of our taxpayer dollars available for the provinces. Does that not make him fair game for a protest on his front lawn? And his front lawn of Parliament, not the front lawn of his house people.
InfoWars isn't news, assholes! I think...
You're the one scared!
I don't really think he is. I still think that I think that
I'm gonna tell you, I believe you are a reasonable person. I think I like the fact that you're thinking about it, which is good.
Partly it's the kind of thing you're talking about, fear that the government might overuse it, just as they could easily overuse traffic surveillance. That one's a cinch. We have the equipment in place already.
The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act to supplement provincial and territorial capacity to address the blockades and occupations. Invoking the Emergencies Act is never the first thing a government should do, nor even the second. The act is to be used sparingly and as a last resort.
He is absolutely right. This is not the first thing you do. The first thing you do is smear your opposition as a racist fringe minority. And then when that doesn't work, you pretend to have corona and hide for a while and hope they go away. It's only after those things fail that you then attack free speech and suspend due process and resort to these extrajudicial crackdowns. And never, under any circumstances, do you ever try the first thing that any decent person would try and actually talk to these citizens about their grievances.
Where's Trudeau?
Entirely peaceful. One big family. Again, we are all Canadians and we refuse to be separated. So, I mean, you've meant so much to me over the last few days. I couldn't come here and I just...
You don't want to end up losing your license, end up with a criminal record, which will impact your job.
So suspending the licenses. One, I'm not sure anyone cares really anymore at this point. We're committed. Two, that still leaves Parliament with a whole bunch of trucks that now have no drivers and no keys.
strategy with no logistics is what that is.
And don't forget, they're all going to be out of fuel soon.
But yeah, they will be out of fuel, so you will have a bunch of trucks that cannot be driven out of here because there's no drivers. It's not like anyone can hop in a rig and drive it.
It was unbelievably it was so out of like a Randian novel or like an Orwell novel or something like that. I mean, the way he was talking about it was really something to watch. I suggest people watch, we will be giving police additional tools. I just love the way they say these things as if they're just like, oh, they're currently working with a Phillips head screwdriver and I'm going to hand them a wrench. We just some new tools. This tool is the right to imprison people for being on a sidewalk. We told them not to be on. This is a really good tool.
I mean, it's kind of interesting in that the police, at least in the capital city of Ottawa, are concerned that they can't get the truckers out by force, by going in and arresting or towing.
So did you see that the towing companies were refusing to tow the trucks when they were ordered to?
Every towing company around, like in
even
a
down
5-hour vicinity, has declined to already tow us.
Apparently they all have COVID.
They all have COVID. I mean, we're seeing that countrywide is now a pandemic of tow drivers.
Harvard professor, remember that point, and a CNN analyst, CEO of Grit Mobility. She tweets, the Convoy protest, applauded by right-wing media as a freedom protest, is an economic and security issue now. The Ambassador Bridge link constitutes 20% of annual trade between U.S. and Canada. Slash the tires, empty gas cans, arrest the drivers, and move the trucks. Now, I'd like to just start with some rudimentary math. Slash the tires, empty the gas cans, arrest the drivers, and move the trucks. How do you propose to move the trucks after you've slashed their tires, emptied the gas cans, and arrested the drivers?
And how do you actually start moving and actually shipping things from coast to coast or across the borders if you don't have actual trucks to do it in?
She says it constitutes 28% of annual trade because of the truckers.
I was never really proud of the fact that I was from Windsor, right? But now you see Windsor on the news and it's like, oh my God. Thank you guys. Like, you guys are doing God's work.
Windsor is where the Ambassador Bridge is being blocked by the Convoy now. $1 billion in trade a day.
Here's the most insane tyrannical part of all of it. They have now established the authority to freeze a bank account without even a court order. Here's the Deputy Prime Minister.
As of today, a bank or other financial service provider will be able to immediately freeze or suspend an account without a court order. In doing so, they will be protected against civil liability for actions taken in good faith.
Don't worry, it's just stealing your money in good faith. This isn't a robber in a ski mask, it's a robber in a clown nose. It's way different. And besides, you truckers are the ones in ski masks. You guys are terrorists. We're just shutting down your terrorist financing.
We are broadening the scope of Canada's anti-money laundering and terrorist financing rules so that they cover crowdfunding platforms and the payment service providers they use.
The financial stuff is incredibly creepy. That they're empowering financial companies to seize assets of people. I mean, it's like, okay, well, this is a completely new power, almost outside the scope of government, but granted by government, which are often the worst. I mean, there's not going to be any due process, I'd imagine, attached to that. Right. How does that process work? What do they seize your money and then you go, no, I wasn't blocking any roads. And you go, well, good luck proving that.
Yeah, it's like asset forfeiture, yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And so the strategy that the federal government is now leading is to go after the money, to freeze the accounts of anybody involved in either directly involved but being here with a truck or supporting somehow. So you could have your personal bank account frozen. If you're a company whose truck is being used in a blockade, your corporate account could be frozen and your vehicle insurance will be suspended. So they're really trying to put the financial screws to the truckers to get them to leave on their own. Not just the truckers, but anybody participating in the blockade. So the hope is that by doing that, you don't have to have the riot cops come in and in a situation that could get really messy.
So, yeah, no matter what they do, I mean, there's rumors of, complete blackout here and we're all going to be arrested. That still leaves all the trucks on Parliament. So
that they still have to tow.
It's kind of interesting that in just a matter of, I think less than 2 weeks, the narrative from the corporate press and the political class switched from this thing is so fringe and so irrelevant that we don't even need to show you the images on the news. And then, of course, now with social media, you're like, well, I don't know. I just saw it and it looked like there were 7,000 trucks and like, you know what I mean? Like 100,000 people down there. Like looks pretty big. But it was so irrelevant, so fringe. This is what Justin Trudeau said. This is a fringe movement. So it went in just a couple of weeks from being a fringe movement to the worst emergency ever.
Yeah.
You know, like that's quite a, for that to be demonstrated to everybody.
What specifically is in that act that is so vital right now to protect Canadians?
We saw for a number of days and weeks into the blockades that it was extremely difficult to get tow trucks to come and tow big rigs. One of the specific measures is an ability to compel tow truck drivers to come and do their job.
The government is the mafia masquerading as a human rights organization. And could this be a better example of that?
Perfect example.
They come out and they go, listen, we've heard what you have to say. Now you leave now or we fucking ruin your life. We'll fucking grab you. We'll separate you from your family and throw you in a fucking cage if we have to. We'll break your kneecaps. And we're doing this because we got to protect all the people.
It leaves a stalemate. Of course, we have tons of other people around this country that are so angry and ready to hop in their vehicles on a moment's notice and drive out here. And what that will bring, you'll see more blockades around the city in different areas. You will see blockades of the blockades, which will create more blockades. And it's just this unending logistical nightmare for anything that they try and do.
There's some blue collar support. You know what I mean? For what's going on there that they can't really get around.
This is something else.
I said this a lot. It's like people are finally feeling proud to be Canadian for the first time in a long time.
The environment and energy is just, it's hard to describe in words, but it is wonderful.
Gentlemen,
thank you for everything you do. Thank you so much, man. Steve is the best.
And when everybody gets together like this and just we resonate off each other, we just feed each other this vibe of inclusivity, love. It doesn't matter what color, creed, religion. It's just or sexuality. None of these ists and phobes that they've been labeling us with.
We're here. It's amazing. Talking to these countries is amazing. It's heartwarming. You get your eyes are swelling up kind of thing.
I like it.
I stood on a bridge in 30 below for 2 hours. Took a bottle of wine and a heater to warm me up, but it was the most unbelievable feeling.
And I got to say that, and working in public order units in my life, the amount of discipline and respect that I've seen this huge population of people demonstrate, as I said, it's touched me on multiple levels. I've never had so many waves of emotion in my life. Yeah. Love you, Canada.
For the first time in 2 years, I've been proud to be Canadian, proud to be a Quebecer. This is history, and I'm glad to be a part of it, and it's great to meet you the same.
Awesome. It's been amazing. Yeah, I haven't realized how depressed I was for the last 2 years until I came here and saw like what real life was like before.
Nice to see you. Hi, how are you? I'm here because of people like you. This guy right here is making this possible.
It's been like at any point in the last 2 years.
It's been like Canada Day for the past 7 days.
Yes! This is what I came for, people.